Well, I am delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast today is Jon Boden, who has become kind of a standout performer of his generation of traditional folk music. Jon is probably best known for his work with Bellowhead, who had enormous success before Jon, in I think it was 2015, decided to uh, seek pastures new, and Bellowhead then went their separate ways. So, Jon, it's fabulous to get you on the Godcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
Yeah, whereabouts in the world are you? Where's home for you?
Sheffield, just not too far from you, but in the on the northwest sort of edge, so sort of in the Peak District.
Yeah, I was
So
there not
I'm in my hut now, looking out over a
lovely,
few hills just through the tangle of my garden, which I haven't looked after very well this year.
fabulous. I was in Sheffield not too long ago. The Tramlines Festival. I took my
Mm.
daughter to the kind of. It was great. The vibe there was incredible because I think it was one of the first big festivals back after
Yeah, yeah.
lockdown. So yeah, have you managed to perform live yet or?
Yeah, I've been quite lucky. I did a handful of gigs back in November in that sort of brief window, and then I've been doing quite a few gigs since May. And yeah, I've been quite lucky really. They've all, I've got, well, my agent, it's luck, and also having a very hardworking agent who's kept moving the gigs as they got cancelled, sort of rescheduling and then rescheduling again, and so eventually most of them got done. So that was good.
Yeah. Are you with the type of person that missed the live performance, Jon? Were you eager to get back at it?
I missed the performing. I didn't miss. Well, put it another way, I really liked being at home actually during lockdown, and that's I think quite a lot of people have found that, and so when I went back to being on the road, I found that quite difficult. Like just suddenly not being surrounded by the four walls of the house I'd been in for lockdown, and so as soon as I was on stage, it was great. But all the sort of the just being away from home and being in nondescript car parks in nondescript towns next to nondescript hotels, that sort of thing was a bit difficult for a while. But I'm getting more used to it again now. So.
Yeah. Jon, if we can just touch on the the attraction to folk music. Can you remember what it was that drew you to folk music? Was it a kind of a family thing that was going on, or was it you just seeking and exploring? How did it come about for you?
Well, I mean, the attraction to it, I think, was um, a sort of a social attraction. Really, so. I mean, I had grown up with a little bit of folk music being played in the background. My parents, particularly my mum, played Steel I Span on the stereo, and had a few quite interesting folk records sort of buried in the backs of the vinyl collection that I had sort of engaged with a little bit. But it wasn't really until as a teenager camping on an organisation called Forest School Camps, which is it's not the same as Forest School, which is now a thing that people know about. But Forest School Camps is an older organisation that just does summer and holiday camps for kids. Anyway, I did that as a kid, and there's a lot of singing around the campfire, and I just really got into that. I think as a kind of a talented musician at that age, but with no real outlet for it because I didn't play in an orchestra. I was playing in rock bands, but that was kind of frustrating because they kept splitting up, and we kept falling out with each other. So I think I was just really looking for some place to make music with other people in it, really for the social thing, and it was singing folk songs around the campfire really that
Yeah.
got me into it.
And you touched there on being a musician kind of first. Was the fiddle the thing that you went to, or had you learned other things like the piano or guitar?
It was guitar was my first instrument, so I learnt classical guitar from a sort of young age, six or something. So that's always been there. It's that strange thing with kids learning from a very young age. Like I can't really remember not being able to play the guitar, so
Mm.
and so that will always be the instrument that feels most comfortable, I suppose. But then again, as a teenager, as I got into folk music, it was like, right, I don't want to play guitar. I want to play fiddle. That's where all the glory is. I sort of taught myself fiddle for a while, aged about 13, 14, I think, and then got some lessons, classical lessons, which sort of took me a bit further on. But then I kind of had to unlearn all that again to go back to the folk music a bit later on. So yeah, it was a bit of a sort of it's been quite a twisty, windy route, my fiddle education.
I was wondering how your peer group were with you when you were kind of, I'm into folk music. Was that quite uncool at the time, or your mates into Wham or whatever it was at the...
Yeah. What were they into? No, they were all into Nana Cherry. That will date me more accurately than that. But they weren't. I didn't bring anyone along with me. Let's put it that way. At school, but I don't remember. I wasn't particularly teased, but I remember I was a bit of a, I kind of grew my hair long and had one of those army surplus bags and looked like, was 6'3" from the age of 13. So I was kind of a bit of a, out on the edge of things anyway. But yeah, no, I didn't. I learned. I got really into Irish music early on, and somehow persuaded my dad to buy me a set of Irish bagpipes, which at that point was a very, very difficult thing to get hold of because it was pre-internet, So anyway, he managed to track down someone who so yes, I do remember doing a school assembly playing the Irish bagpipes. Which everyone seemed to be like okay with it.
Yeah. and are you a musician who's kind of sticks to the safety of folk music, or do you enjoy other genres? I've spoken to quite a few musicians who, I've been quite surprised when they've said, well, actually, I was talking to an opera singer who was kind of into really kind of heavy rock, and it was like, well, really? Do you enjoy other genres, or do you prefer to stick to what you know?
I mean, to listen to, I just more and more find myself listening to music that I don't perform, So a lot of classical, but not classical as in Mozart, sort of pre-Mozart or post Beethoven classical. That's sort of my thing. And yeah, so I like quite a lot of choral music actually, sort of early choral music, but jazz as well. I quite like listening to jazz. So I don't know if that's about. I think sometimes when you, it's a bit of a downside to doing music as a career is that now I tend to analyze everything that I listen to. So if it's in any way related to what I do professionally, I can still enjoy it, but one part of my brain is evaluating it or working out what's going on or working out why I haven't done what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, I find it's a slightly different. If I don't find it stress-free, let's put it that way, whereas if I put classical or jazz on, then it's just sort of I can just enjoy that on a more sort of detached level. But to play, I would love to play jazz. I've sort of dabbled with stuff but not got very far with it, so that's on my list of things at some point to do. Classical, I think I've missed the boat on that, really.
Okay, fair enough.
I think you have to start very young and be very good at it to play classical music. But yeah.
Yeah, and John, you went to Durham Uni, I noticed, which is also a hotbed of an arena for training priests, the Church of England.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, did your paths ever cross with anybody putting theologians up there?
Yeah, I did a few plays with Shakespeare productions, and now what was it, James? I can't remember his second name now. I think he's actually in Manchester now, so you might know him, but I can't remember his name now. Anyway, fantastic actor. He was playing Prospero, and if I remember his name, I'll let you know. But yes, but yeah, we were sort of paths did cross with St John's and did a few plays in St John's, so I sort of was familiar with St John's being the training college primarily. Yeah, so yeah, a little bit of crossover. Yeah.
And you studied. Your studies were medieval studies, is that right? So
yeah,
did that take you to the cathedral much, or a place like Holy Island? You get out and about?
Yeah, a little bit. Not as much as I should have done. spend a bit too much time in the pub playing folk music to really fully engage with all that. But yeah, I mean, it was a great place. Certainly, it was very atmospheric, studying medieval history and literature in in the environment of Durham. So yeah, and a few things I did. I mean, actually, did I was part of the Durham Medieval Theatre group, so I actually played Christ in a mystery play.
Okay.
On a wagon, outside the front of the cathedral. So that was quite good. So it is quite, it's quite a like a, though I can't remember what any of the words, but I remember having to berate the audience for their sinfulness outside of the front of Durham Cathedral, which was quite good fun.
Was it a role that came quite naturally to you then?
Yeah, well, maybe yes, yeah.
And did Durham, John, did Durham have any impact on you musically as well? How, as you're maturing as a musician, did Durham send you in any new direction or get your mindset going somewhere?
Well, just the folk scene was fantastic there. So there was a pub, there is a pub still called the Coal Pits Hotel. Sadly, it's owned by Samuel Smiths, who about 20 years ago decided that they would get rid of all live music in all their pubs so that they didn't have to pay the PRS license. So a lot of great sessions got just, chopped. And anyway, but that's where I fortunately that didn't happen until after I left Durham. So yeah, so Monday nights I'd go and play Irish tunes in the Coal Pits, and Thursday nights I'd go and sing English songs, English folk songs in the Coal Pits. And particularly the singing night was a real, it was it was a small little room and people would ram in and just sing really loud harmonies, and it would get more, as the evening went on, it would get more and more chorus based, and everyone would get a bit drunker and louder, and it was really magical. And I had some great, it really expanded my knowledge of the repertoire of the kind of revival folk scene. So that was very, very significant, that place, to me. Yeah.
And folk music is probably bigger than it's ever been in the UK. It seems to be doing incredibly well and getting quite a lot of, I know Radio 2 give quite a lot of time to it. What do you think it is that is the attraction of it, or why it's kind of become as popular as it is now?
Well, I think it just sort of goes in waves, and it's one of those genres that can sort of bleed very naturally into other genres, I think. So it's not a sort of either you're into folk or you're not into folk. There's like, you can, any genre can kind of have a little bit of folk on one end of it, and then that sort of gradually blends into sort of other types of folk genre. So I think there's that sort of infinite flexibility of it as a genre. People use the term folk very broadly, so sometimes it just means the fact that someone's using an acoustic guitar, or then on the other end of it, it's sort of only songs that are 200-year-old songs that are sung unaccompanied, So it's sort of, it's partly because I think the terminology is so broad, but I don't know. It sort of seems to come and go, and come into favour with, the powers that be in the radio end of things. And then, actually at the moment, I'm not sure it is getting that much coverage on Radio 2. I think compared to a few years ago, it's maybe in a bit of a lull. Although having said that, Scaryville just had their track played a lot for quite a few months. So I don't know. It just comes, it ebbs and flows, I suppose.
Yeah. And when you got together when you put Bellowhead together, was there a strategy, or was it just to play music? Did you anticipate that you would become as popular and successful as you were?
Yes, there was a strategy. No, we didn't anticipate that level of success. The plan was, and the impetus was that it was quite clear that there was a gap in the market for a sort of festival headliner band that played English traditional music, because a lot of the English folk festivals at that time had a lot of English traditional acts playing, but they all tended to be lower down the bill, and then for that headliner slot they'd quite often get a big Scottish or Irish or French Canadian or Basque, or world music band would come in and sort of do that, you know, everyone up on their feet dancing at the end of the night kind of thing. So it was just quite clear that there was a gap for that band. I mean, to the extent that it had been talked about by lots of other people. And when I think when Bellowhead actually did it, I think there were quite a lot of people going, "Oh, we were thinking of doing that. We didn't get around to it." Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like it was quite obvious in a way. It's just that we got on with it. You know, so the plan was very much to just put the band together in order to do festivals and get those big festival slots. And that worked extremely well and very quickly, actually. So, but then the surprise was that it was able to then build from there. That I think we sort of conceived that as the end point, whereas in fact that was the beginning, and then it sort of grew from there into its own touring circuit and out sort of beyond the folk scene. So, yeah, it was quite a ride, really. It was good fun.
John, I've got to ask, because there's quite a lot of you. How many of you were in the band? Was it 10 or 11? Or
it was 11? Yeah.
How does that work financially? You know, does it pay the bills for 11 people? You know, it's a big band you were in, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it means that everything's split 11 ways, so you have to earn a lot of money before it amounts to very much. I mean, to be honest, by the end of things with Bellowhead, it was so big that it was worth everyone's while doing it. You know, I mean, it wasn't quite enough that we could, you know, not do anything else.
Yeah.
Although for a couple of years I did not do anything else, but that was more because I was sort of house husbanding the other half, so I didn't need to sort of be sort of full-time earner. But yeah, no, it was you know, it worked. The money worked by the end. It didn't at the beginning. It was you know, it was not great, but that's true of a lot of bands, you know.
And taking the finance out, I didn't really like asking that question, but I was intrigued. But when you were riding the crest of the wave as the band, what was that like? Were you literally, you know, loving it, or was anxiety creeping in? What was the feeling when you were as at the height of your success?
Well, I just really enjoyed all of it. I mean, in terms of I think what was quite nice with it is that it built quite gradually, but it was like a consistent but gradual build. So it was never like, oh my God, this. Well, there were a few moments of, oh my God, this is incredible. So first time we were on Jules Holland was pretty mind blowing, and performing opposite the Red Hot Chili Peppers and you know, Tom York over there, and you know, that was quite mind blowing. And a few festivals early on where we're like, oh my God, there's 25,000 people out there, that's ridiculous. But in general, it was quite a sort of gradual but steady build. So I think we were able therefore to enjoy it because nothing kind of totally freaked us out, because it was all kind of gradual. I mean, I think that the stuff that people don't see with bands is that there's a lot of decision making to be done behind the scenes, and a lot of you know, putting material together and working out what material you're going to do, what you're not going to do, and that's just really stressful in any band environment, I think. And you know, with an 11-piece band, it's certainly the decision making side of things was really quite stressful, because it's like, you know, to get 11 people to even just say yes or no is quite difficult. So and I guess the more success we had, the more decisions there were to be made, and the more logistics there were to be dealt with. So it wasn't all fun by any means, but the performing was always fun, you know.
Yeah.
Well, not always. 95% of the time, I'd say it was fun. Yeah.
And so when you're so successful and you come into a conclusion to leave something that's given you success and security, was that something that had been in your mind for a while, or was it something that was dropped like a bomb on the rest of the guys, or was everybody kind of heading that way anyway?
Sort of neither of those really. It was not. I don't think it was completely out of the blue, but equally, I don't think it. You know, we could have carried. We were. I mean, when I told them I was that I wanted to leave, my assumption was that they would carry on without me, and I was quite surprised when they decided that they didn't want to do that. So in a sense, it was a surprise, I guess, but in another sense, the fact that they decided they didn't want to carry on without me suggests that maybe there was a sense of it being not a bad time to, quit while we're ahead, kind of thing. So yeah, it was difficult to sort of, leaving anything is difficult, isn't it? But they were all really cool about it, and they all understood. And it was about artistic direction as well, because I really wanted to focus a bit more on songwriting, and that was just never going to work in Bellowhead. It wasn't what Bellowhead was for. Bellowhead was for traditional stuff. So
Yeah.
and I didn't want to just keep doing stuff on the side that would always get swamped by anything that Bellowhead did. So that, I think everyone sort of understood that, and everyone had their other projects as well, which they had the similar kind of experience with. So yeah, I think it was it.
And after that, John, how was it? I recently interviewed Chris Difford from Squeeze, and asked him similar question, like, once you'd gone your separate ways, how often did you think about Glenn and the rest of the band? And he kind of said, well, at first every day, and then you kind of get into your own thing. Was there any? I suppose what I'm asking you is, was there any guilt attached to it after the split had been made, or any regrets?
Well, not really, because we had this we had these two big tours after I announced that I wanted to leave, and then because of that we booked two farewell tours. Well, it was one long one, but it was spread over sort of 3 months, and so they were just fantastic, those tours. They were just the most fun, the most successful, most sort of joyous tours that we'd done. So it was a really nice way to finish, actually, and I think we were all kind of closer at the end of that, because there was no sort of stress on it. It wasn't any issue of what are we going to do next, what's what needs to be done. It was just this is let's just appreciate what we've got, and I think everyone felt like that about that last tour. So it was a very positive and happy and kind of loving, even that's a strange word, but there was we sort of felt quite sort of it was very nice ending anyway. So I think that meant that it wasn't too awkward. I mean, we didn't then meet up. We kept talking about trying to meet up sort of once a year or something, just to go drinking, basically. But that it happened once, but only with about half the band. I didn't manage to make that one. So it wasn't really until that we did this reunion gig in November that we were all in the same room together. And in fact, Andy Mellon wasn't there. But so it was no, it was fine.
What was that like when you got back together? Was that a joyous occasion for you?
Oh yeah, it was great. I mean, it was kind of weird, because it was a bit like no time had elapsed at all. We just sort of walked in. It was like another dressing room, and all right, here we are again. Yeah, but it was like, it was 5 years, and everyone was in masks. So that was weird. But yeah, it was really great to see everyone. Really great to play. I mean, everyone was a little bit nervous because we hadn't played for 5 years, but I think because of that, everyone prepared really well. So actually, we played really well, because there was none of that sort of, oh, it'll probably be fine, I probably don't need to practice that, which was always a sort of temptation when with a band that you played with a lot. It's sort of easy to assume that you're just going to be able to do it, and most of the time you can, but anyway, in this case, we all turned up having really worked very hard to be on top of all the material. So it was just quite a pleasure playing in that environment when we were just playing, I think, as well as we've ever played.
Yeah. John, this is the Godcast, so I've got to ask the kind of standard question: where are you with faith and things? Is it something that you've given it much time to, or not, or what's your position?
I'm pretty dyed-in-the-wool atheist. I mean, as a young teenager, I remember being like didn't really know. I mean, I grew up. My grandparents are Catholic, so there was a certain amount of going to church with my grandparents and that sort of thing. But yeah, I've pretty much been an atheist since sort of mid-teens. But I'm quite interested in. I'm not an anti-religious atheist, if you know what I mean.
No.
I'm very drawn to the the kind of artistic expression of belief is something that is so central to the arts in general. I think, I mean, maybe less so with folk music, I suppose, but I'm very drawn to it in that sense. As I say, I listen to a lot of religious choral music, and I think about it quite a lot, I suppose, or I have thought about it quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm quite interested in humanism rather than atheism, I suppose, in the sense of there being a purpose, even though I don't see it as a supernatural purpose. But actually, I think there are sort of links. If you see, if you view God as a metaphor for the potential of mankind to improve itself, then actually we're all on the same page. Do you know what I mean? It's like because then you're talking about all the same things. You're talking about how can we as a species evolve to be more moral, more look after each other better, look after the planet better, and that's exactly what religion is talking about. So all we're really differing on is in a sense, whether it's metaphorical or actual. And as I understand it, there are sort of gradations of that anyway within belief. So, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about choral music. What do you enjoy about choral music, John? I mean, it's just I was quite late coming to the church, and didn't really have any knowledge of choral music. But now I'm in the church and in the institution. I find it quite beautiful and moving. What's your attraction to that kind of genre?
I find it just very peaceful. I mean, it's specifically sort of Renaissance choral music that I listen to, which has that very sort of just peaceful. It's the polyphonic movement of it, I think, that has this. It sort of envelops you because all the parts are moving, and it's that sort of. It's very fluid and yet very peaceful. But I also. I'm quite involved in the Sheffield carols, which is more like sort of 19th century hymn, fuguing hymns, very rowdy Church of England type stuff and Methodist stuff. And so I do a lot, I spend quite a lot of time singing quite religious material quite loudly in the pub. So I'm quite drawn to that side of it as well, and shape note singing and all that sort of stuff. So I do enjoy. There is something about it's a very I suppose the subject matter of religion or of religious belief in terms of songs, it makes it quite a communal, expressive format in a way that singing, love songs or whatever is quite a personal thing. Actually singing there's something similar to folk song in that sense, in that the singers are all have the same relationship to the material, whereas when I don't know when you're singing a Beatles song, it's like you're singing a Beatles song. It's not you don't all own it in the same sort of way. So I don't know. So yeah, I'm just generally quite drawn to the aesthetic, I suppose. And I always like going to church. I don't go to church very often, but I like the. I think it's a great
John,
idea.
We need more atheists in church, John. That's what we.
Well, yeah. Well, I've always meant to go more because I think it's such a great thing in terms of what a great thing to do on a Sunday. Everyone in a particular locality go to a particular building, talk about important stuff for a bit, and then it's just a really nice thing to do. And I mean, I was quite interested in that movement to start a sort of an atheist version. It was the Sunday. I can't remember what they called it. The Sunday service, it was called, or something. Anyway, it was a bit of a movement a few years ago to sort of do Sunday sort of atheist or humanist things. But But then part of me thinks, well, that's what churches are doing. Maybe we don't. Maybe you just need atheists to go to church a bit more, as you say. When it's a welcoming church, I think that's great. I mean, there've been some services I've gone to where I felt a little bit like I was somehow being dishonest to the other people. That I think there's a slight sense of guilt as an atheist going to church that people will assume that you're not an atheist, and therefore that feels a bit dishonest. But I think it depends on the church, doesn't it? And also,
Yes.
I think in general, it just feels like people are more open to it now than they were certainly when I was a kid.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, John. And on the other side of Bellowhead, you've had a busy career. Have you enjoyed being a solo artist? Has that been fruitful and an endurable period of your life for you?
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's all these different lineups have their pluses and minuses. It's lovely having a bit more freedom on stage to do whatever I feel like doing, just in small ways sometimes, just like, oh, I'll just do an extra chorus or I'll drop that verse or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That doesn't seem like a big deal, but actually it's quite a sense of freedom on stage to have that. And just for just been interesting doing more singer-songwriter stuff, and it's a very different relationship with the audience. So I guess I found it interesting, and I always like to. I guess one of my big motivations is to be good at my job, and I like that feeling of getting getting better at something. So I suppose with the solo stuff, I've felt that I've been consistently getting better at it, and that's been good. It's a bit harder though the thing is, the difficulty with Bellowhead is it was such a sort of euphoric live experience. It's like every other thing I'm ever going to do on stage is always going to be a little in the shadow of that experience, so it did take a while to just get used to that it's you can't expect the same. I mean, I knew it anyway, but you just, having done 4 years or whatever just doing Bellowhead, you do get used to a certain level of audience euphoria, which you're not going to get when you're singing your songs from a post-apocalyptic concept album solo to 150 people or whatever. So there was a bit of adjustment to be done there. And it's nice now back playing with Jon, the duo, because that's different again. It's sort of I guess halfway between, because there's two of you on stage, so it's much more sort of jolly on stage when there's somebody else there. I don't know. I quite enjoy that variety. I think whatever I do, I'll get bored of eventually, in fact, after not very long. So it's, so I sort of need these different lineups to stop that happening.
And for people who aren't aware, when you refer to Jon, you talk about Jon Spears, who was with you in Bellowhead. How did that come about, Jon? Who instigated that? Was it a record label, or was it just you two guys saying, "Come on, let's do something"?
Do you mean so we started as a duo before?
This time round, yeah.
Oh, but this time around, no. We'd always we stopped playing as a duo in, I think, 2017, I think. And the reason was that it was just, everything was just getting very stressful, because it was like Spires and Boden were, in conflict with Bellowhead, and Bellowhead was in conflict with my solo stuff, and it was just it was kind of like everyone wanted time and more, and release schedules and media. It was like we were all competing for the same thing. So it's like, well, things are going really well for Bellowhead, so let's just knock the duo on the head for a bit. And I pulled back from the Remnant Kings and stuff, and so it was really just to kind of focus on Bellowhead. It wasn't, it was always the idea that we would come back to it at some point, So we sort of decided we would before lockdown, and then lockdown happened to hit when we were trying to get an album together and that sort of stuff. So yes, it's been it's been quite an intense year for albums for me, because I did my third and final album from a trilogy of albums, songwriting albums, which came out in March, and then that was Last Mile Home, and then me and Jon, our album just came out last week. So so it's been quite a busy recording and arranging year, which is good.
And is it exciting when new material comes out, John? John, are you keen to hear the response, or are you just you're just satisfied that you've done a piece, you put it together, and now it's out there and it's in the hands of other people now?
Yeah, a bit of both, really. I mean, yeah, it's lovely that it's just that, first responses to something new that you, particularly because you spend so long working on these things, and then and hundreds of hours listening to them for mixes and all that sort of stuff and practicing it, and then it's nice, that sort of first moment of going and ta-da, here it is, and then everyone's like, oh right, oh that's brand new, and of course it's not brand new to us because we've spent the last year doing it. So that's lovely. That's a real sort of sense of ending and achievement. But yeah, also just once it's out, it does feel a bit like, yes, it's out in the world. Certainly with the songwriting stuff, that trilogy of albums, I feel like it's a contained thing. It feels like a really important thing for me creatively. It's like, feels like maybe it's the most important thing I've done, but it doesn't really matter to me whether it's perceived like that externally. I think I sort of feel like it's central to my creative achievements or whatever. But and so that's enough. It's like, obviously it'd be great if it sold loads of copies, but it's yeah, there is something kind of cathartic about starting a project, creating it and finishing it, and then sort of moving on.
And just finally, John, as we're recording this kind of in the early autumn, you're about to go on the road with John and take the new songs out there. What can people expect from your show coming up? Is there going to be something for everyone there?
Well, something for everyone, unless you happen to hate English folk music, in which case it's probably not for you. Yeah, it's going to be quite jolly. So the new album is quite a jolly album. Not totally intentionally. It just sort of ended up, that's what we were drawn to, I think, during lockdown for material. We just didn't really fancy doing anything too dark, So it's all the new stuff's quite sort of just sort of.
Didn't you say something about there's no reference to death, which is unusual for something like that?
There's a zero body count, which is very unusual for a folk record. So yeah, it's just it's called Fallow Ground, and it has that sense of that sense of new life that you get after the winter or something, or after lockdown or whatever. And yeah, I don't know, I think there's something quite sort of life affirming about some of the songs and the tunes that we've chosen. So hopefully that will come across on the live show.
And a busy time. You've got quite a lot of dates in the diary. I was looking.
Yeah, 23, I think.
Gosh.
So I'm hoping we don't have another lockdown, because that would be a bit of a disaster. But yeah, so it's going to be quite an epic month of gigs. But it'll be really nice to be back out doing it.
And last question, John, you're I'm in Burnley in Lancashire. Have you got affinity to Lancashire? You well received here when you come?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Well, we don't seem to have a regular gig, but we seem to play quite a lot of different places in Lancashire.
I think you're in Manchester, aren't you? You're on in Manchester, so people can
Yeah, well, that's it. We did. So yeah, is it again Manchester? We seem to do a different venue every time we come to Manchester. So which is nice, because you get to see the city a bit. But so we're doing the folk festival this time, which is at Home. Is it called Home, the venue?
I think it is. Yeah,
something like that. Or is that the festival? I don't know. Anyway, so I have been there before actually, and that's a very cool place. So that's. Yeah, that's exciting. So I'm looking forward to that.
Wonderful, John. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and just finding a bit about your career and what makes your juices flow. And wish you well with the album and the music. And just say to you, thanks very much for coming on the Godcast. Thank you.
That's very kind. Thanks for having me.